Hello, leader. Welcome back to the Fierce Factor podcast. It's Kaylee here. And gosh, you are tuning into episode, I don't even know what it is, 227. I have lost track at this point. I'm coming to you after a coaching call where I got a little bit challenged by one of my clients who said, Kaylee, can I coach you for a minute? And when people ask you the hard questions and you're like, you're right, spot on, but I just don't want to go there right now. I've just been sort of like sitting with some of the questions that she's asked about my priorities and where I was spending my time and the future. And essentially, we had gone through this exercise where I had asked her on our last call to write a letter to her now self from her future self of 10 years. And she wrote the most beautiful letter about being in France and how she was living this beautiful, gorgeous life and had so much abundance and impact and was so at peace with her life. And we were talking about how special it was to be able to make decisions or to go get into that state and to start to think about basic business decisions or any decision from the place of that woman and the wiser woman who sort of has the knowing. And so I think it's so interesting and so relatable to what I wanted to talk with you about today, in the sense that we have so many answers inside of us that if we just take the time to slow down and ask ourselves and allow ourselves to approach our decision making from a different lens. And I think that's the powerful and just really sweet part of having like somebody else in your life that you trust that can help you really think from that perspective. It's amazing what we can insource and how we can come up with answers. And it's so relative to what I wanted to talk about today because an incident had happened with a client. And I think it's just been sort of an ongoing conversation as women in our industry are continuing to experience more and more success and are scaling up and building something in many cases by accident that all of a sudden becomes this, wow, this asset that can be a legacy business, and starting to think about their relationship with their business in a different way. And with that, who is going to be going on that journey with them? And so we have quite a few of our academy clients who are either hiring on or promoting and developing managers in their companies. And a question was asked, does it make more sense to promote a current employee or to hire a new one? And I think it's a really great question to ask. And I think that the answer isn't always black or white. But I think it depends on how aligned a new employee is with your values and how coachable they are and how much they're going to be able to sort of get you in your company or how ready, willing, and able is that current employee to continue to push themselves to grow into that kind of leader that you need them to become. And so I wanted to talk about this conversation about practice managers and practice leaders and the critical role of a practice leader in your business and some of the nuances between hiring / promoting and developing a manager, versus just going out cold to find somebody with a bunch of experience. And I kind of see pitfalls happen in both sides. And I think the point is, one, recognizing that as founders, and, certainly I can speak for myself too, as somebody that is a service-based business owner who built the business around a personal brand, and somebody who, my brain is my work, right? And building intellectual property and coaching. And, it's very similar to the women we work with who are service-based providers. What originally what I think like gets us to our first million is just becoming world class at our craft. So, for our clients, it might be polishing up clinical skills or, learning how to help patients experience better results and outcomes, or maybe, focusing on understanding anatomy better, the artistry of injecting, taking other clinical courses, et cetera. For me, coaching, working on my coaching skills, learning how to be a better communicator, how to be better at my craft, right? And at the end of the day, though that's all great, but if you want to build a company, then you have to have somebody who can really lead and manage the team. And managing and leading are really two sides of the same coin. They're both important and they're both two different skill sets. And so I think that there's this sort of weird thing that happens when we go to pass the baton off to the next person who we're going to consider our right-hand person or our manager in our business. And that, there's too often mistakes that are made because we haven't really thought through exactly what it is we need now and what it is that we're going to need in a year from now as we continue to grow exponentially. And so I see really one of two mistakes made very often. Number one, we get exhausted and we're like, I can't manage the business. I don't know enough about business, or I don't have the time to do it. I can't manage it. I need help. And we're exhausted. And so we look for somebody who has years of experience. And we end up overpaying for somebody who is usually, you know, often like somebody who's coming in to solve a pain point for us. And it still takes all of that time to onboard them into our culture and to get to know our team and to gel with the team. And we bring them in for like these big administrative tasks. So like manage HR and oversee marketing. And, we're essentially giving them these big buckets of results that we're handing off to them. Like X amount of profitability, track all these KPIs, like make sure that, XYZ happens in the business, and they're overseeing really the bulk of results for the company. And we just sort of delegate that right off to somebody, right? Or what happens is the second scenario, which is our front desk coordinator, really wants a promotion and we need help on the managerial tasks. And so we just give them a role promotion, pay them more because they want to make more money, but we haven't actually grown them into a manager role. So now we're going to give them all this responsibility. They're going to go from being sort of tacticians in our business to now they're a right-hand partner strategist who's responsible for management of other human beings and tasks in the company, and they've never done that before. And so either of these scenarios are, present potential challenges because especially if we've been the ones doing everything, there's going to be like like to call it the passing of the baton. And there's going to be growing pains in that in either way. But I want us to really think today about, I always like to think like things aren't always black or white. When I'm presented with a situation, I always ask myself, where's the gray? And I think like as as I was sharing that my client was kind of challenging me to think about where's the gray. I love it when people give me back a dose of my own medicine. And I was starting to think about this for this sort of idea of developing a practice leader in your company. If you want to transition from being the primary breadwinner and the main provider in your business to becoming the CEO, I think the first place to start is really right here with you. It starts with me as a leader, right? That's by identifying what tasks I'm doing that can be delegated to somebody else at low level, high level. So essentially what's on my plate now that I can enroll somebody else into. And we get so hung up on, okay, I need a manager and I'm going to pay him so much and they need to do all these things. And I think that there is a ramp up period. There are some stepping stones that can happen between the place of I'm answering phones at the front to I'm now managing and leading this entire organization. And that starts with us really stepping out of service delivery every minute and taking some time to really think through what it is that we need help with and how we can train and develop and support and mentor somebody else through that process to the point that now that they've hit these milestones and they've achieved these growth objectives, then they're now ready to take on that practice leader role. And so if you want someone to take over responsibility for results of the company, first, they're going to have to know how to execute on the tasks that are associated with that responsibility. So what had happened recently with a client of ours is that they had put together this really beautiful job description, presented it to an employee who had asked for more responsibility in the company, and gave them a small pay raise, or, modest pay raise, right? Thinking, okay, well, this employee has some learning to do. And so we'll kind of step them up and have this sort of probation period. And I think that that what could have been a better approach would be to have helped that employee first go through that probation period in their own role, and then shown them that growth plan so that they didn't feel so intimidated by the job that was in front of them. And I think ultimately that employee the first time around was like, this is so much, I can't take on all this responsibility. And then when that the second approach, was presented and showing, nope, here's the actual milestones for you to achieve. Here are the gates, here are the activities that we're going to pass off to you one by one, and then you're going to be ready to go. I think it was a very different receptivity to that, and a much better understanding of a growth plan. I think our employees really want to know that there is the potential for growth, and that in itself sometimes can outweigh the actual monetary compensation growth on its own. So, for example, rather than just paying an employee more money because they've been working for you for a long time or because they ask for it, there's a growth runway for them to which they can see that when I learn this new skill, then I can advance in my role. And then therefore with that promotion, there will be a pay increase. So I think ultimately what I want to drive home here is that there's a whole runway of support that you can cultivate for an employee between the point of them being a front desk to, an operations manager role. And I think there's so much beauty in developing your employees from within to keep them, retain them and keep them engaged and bought into your vision, and just the cohesivity of the team without having to hire in another manager further down the road from the outside. And I see so many women we work with try to do this, but start to feel intimidated by the thought of having that employee take on so much responsibility as a manager. So my suggestion is, getting them into a position of more of a mentorship like role. So maybe there's a level up or a senior role at what they're doing. And with that seniority comes a delegation of tasks that are associated with the future role. So maybe rather than just having them jump in and become a manager and do manager things, you start slowly giving them more and more responsibility in their existing role. Like maybe now we're having you manage employee schedules and time off. We're having you run team meetings. We're having you oversee the execution of events. You're building and delegating systems along with the team. You're writing policies. You're sitting in on employee performance reviews. So we're doing things in tandem as part of the training process with that employee that are essentially tasks that we have as an owner that we're starting to take off of our plate little by little, in which case we built out a clear growth plan with benchmarks so that employee knows, once I pass off on these skill sets, then I promote into this new role. I think we can do this with our clinical team as well. In fact, having this growth runway is one key way to retain your employees because they can see clearly how you're going to invest in their development so that they can get better. We as people want to be better at our role. We want to do a good job. We just often don't know exactly what's needed of us or where we're going. And so it can become a mundane and tactical experience working in a company when you don't have these conversations on a day-to-day basis. And this is a really great way of doing that. So essentially, this is where I want us to really think about a manager and uh, I don't want to say hesitate, but really thoughtfully evaluate who is leading in your business. Because essentially, in my opinion, if you don't have a leader, do you really have a practice? Because if you're running around head down in the day to day and you have someone just managing the onesie twosies of what's going on and nobody's really leading the vision, nobody's really creating this experience where the people want to show up every day and enroll into the culture and feel empowered by who they're becoming in the company, then the management side is going to fall flat because it's hard to manage people to things to do if they're not excited about the leadership of who they're becoming through that process, if that makes sense. So I really think that in order to be a great manager, you need to have leadership in the company. And what happens is when we're thinking about promoting people and we go through this runway of activities, we have a checklist of things like these are skills that you need to learn. But truly, the primary skills needed in leadership are knowing how to lead people, how to influence others, how to communicate. And I'm not seeing a lot of practice owners invest in themselves to learn those things, let alone mentor and train their practice leader on those things. The other thing that happens is we hire for today instead of hiring for the future. So we try to fill the gaps of what, I don't know, like get relief of the things that we need now instead of really pulling ourselves back and thinking about our future people plan and the growth plan of the company, and then hiring and training up to and developing people into who you're going to need in 12 months from now. And so my recommendation when you're thinking about who that right person is, when to promote somebody, how to bring somebody into that leadership role is to think about what is the career path for them and focusing on the skill gaps that that person has now between, who they are and who they need to become in a year, and then build a plan that gets them closer to that. Secondly, I would think about creative growth. So back to that gray area, is there a way they can grow potentially by creating levels of competency or a checklist of milestones or gates that an employee can learn to learn skills to pass to then level up into the next promotable role? And if you don't have the tools or the time or the resources to develop that person now so that in 12 months they are ready for that big job of leading the company and the team that you're becoming in a year, then you need to bring in a scale mentor. You need to bring in somebody that can help you with that process. That is why we've created our certified aesthetic practice leader program at KLC. So if you didn't know about this program, maybe this is a godsend for you. Maybe there's a reason you're listening to this. But this was created as a request by the women that we were working with who are running their businesses, who are in this exact particular predicament, where they had built a business with somebody that they love and trust and who has really ridden the wave with them and has adapted to all of the changes that have happened in the company and grown with them. Yeah, didn't just innately know the skills of how to be a great leader of the practice. I don't think this has to be role specific either. I don't think the goal always has to be you develop into a practice manager. I think you could develop into any creative pathway of leadership that ultimately takes that employee to where they're going to best benefit the company that's in alignment with their own goals. But I don't think it can happen without them learning the critical skills, both the practical skills of the business mechanics and what needs to happen to lead and manage a successful practice, but also the leadership skills, the communication skills, the ability to have difficult conversations with people and to influence them in a way that keeps things positive and keeps employees motivated on continuing to do a really great job and show up their best every single day with passion in the company. And that's not something that happens overnight for people. So it is incumbent upon us as leaders of our company to A, learn those skills, and B, to translate those skills into the other humans that we're passing the baton off to behind us in every role. And in particular, in a role of somebody that we're giving so much responsibility and autonomy to in terms of leading the actual backbone of our business and being a manager of the people, they need to have access to those resources. And that's why we've created our certified aesthetic leader, practice leader program. So if that's something you're interested in, I'll link up in the show notes here, or you can go to our website at klcconsultants.com for, gosh, I can't remember I think / practice manager, but if you go up to the tab and you look up our programs, you'll see it there. So that's where we can help you with a curriculum of data of like, hey, here's the sessions and the milestones that they need to know. And we can help you build a scorecard and a growth plan for them. And we can get them into a mentorship program where they can be surrounded by other practice leaders who are talking the same talk and walking the same walk and coming up collectively with productive solutions on becoming better ambassadors of their business as entrepreneurs who are working under high growth female leaders. And I want to just kind of wrap up this podcast episode with a few red flags that I've seen. One, if you're looking to promote an employee, or gosh, keep an employee on your team, I want you to really think about how well they take critical feedback, because somebody who's in a leadership role not only has to be able to emotionally self-regulate and to take feedback, but through that process, learn how to give critical feedback to other people. So if you're having a conversation with them and they're not somebody who is excellent at taking feedback and applying that into how they're going to show up the next day, that would be a red flag for me. Somebody who makes excuses, there's nothing worse than somebody who makes a mistake and then doesn't own up to it, right? Blames somebody else or lies about it. So we're looking for somebody who can take critical feedback and who can be really honest about the fact that they don't know everything and share with you their gaps and the things that they need to learn. I think some of the strongest people that have ever worked for me have been the ones who've asked the most questions and for the most help. Because I think we're always learning, and we know that the more we know, the more we don't know, right? And so a practice leader needs to be somebody who is really self-aware on where their gaps are and can communicate that to you and ask for help. And so those are some of the things that I would definitely be paying attention to as you're thinking about who to promote in your practice and what are some of those key qualities. Somebody that takes feedback well, that loves to ask for help, that's excited about growth, and not just the promotion or the idea of growth, but that is buying into that process with you, and somebody that you can absolutely see has the aptitude for learning the skills of the position that they will need to be managing or they will need to be in support of the company a year, 2 years, 3 years from now. Okay. All right, leader. Well, I hope this has been helpful. I have so many opinions and so much to talk about when it comes to practice managers and practice leadership. But I just wanted to make sure that you knew that a practice leader is an absolute non-negotiable in your business, and that we have the resources to support you and a proven track record of helping practice owners and leaders develop in tandem together. And, we have some pretty amazing 1-2 punches within our academy ecosystem. So it's been really neat to see them grow together. So we would love to be there to partner with you and help you. And if you have any other questions, send me a DM. And I will chat with you, same place, same time next week.